How are you feeling? That's really, really unconvincing. So, please raise the vibration a little bit. That's not bad. I'll take that. I'm going to introduce myself. I'll do it in like a few stages. So, my script says, I'm Oliver Mann. I'm the creator of Shadow Journaling, and obviously the co-founder of this festival. So, thank you all for showing up. And ironically, as a co-founder of this festival, it was my little secret to get out of this gig. Because for the last few weeks, I've been thinking, damn it, I've got to go on stage and talk about myself and what I'm doing instead of introducing other people. And I was thinking right to the end, after weeks of sleepless nights, anxious mornings, I think as a co-founder, I can get myself out of this. But I didn't, because the topic is journaling and change. And those of you who have worked with me know that's something I'm very passionate about, because I think that's the key thing that we're doing. I think journaling can be a lot of things, but for me, journaling is a powerful tool in personal development and self-change. So, the main reason I was terrified of coming up here, apart from you lot, obviously, was, have I changed enough to talk about this? How much change is needed in order for you to say, journaling changed my life, and now I'm going to tell you about it? So, coming up on stage is probably the strongest proof that I've got, because here I am. And if you'd asked me about this 10 years ago, 5 years ago, actually, if you'd asked me about this last festival, are you ready to come up on stage and talk about this? I'd say yes. Yes, but not now. Let's do it later. I'll keep the camera on the road, and that'll be fine. So then the question is, apart from this kind of universal fear of public speaking, what else is going on? And Amy mentioned curiosity, and that's one of the key drivers for me. Everybody who's worked with me knows that I keep hammering that point. So, curiosity for me is that desire to find out what's going on behind the curtains. What's going on? And I like to think about the Buddha. What would the Buddha do? This is like a helpful tool for me. And the thing is, I never imagined the Buddha sitting behind the steering wheel screaming at other drivers. He's never muttering under his breath, the coffee's too hot, or the coffee's too cold. And he doesn't cycle around the city and just wishing other cyclists didn't exist. So I'm clearly not the Buddha. And then the question is, why am I not? What is it that I've not accepted in my life so that I can't just chill out? So there's a lot to unpack there. Like, what is it that I need to decipher in my own life to figure out, like, how can I be like the Buddha? I'm wondering, why am I so scared of being up here in front of you? And in that process, I realized there's a lot more to it than just that kind of boring fear of public speaking. So when I was in my 20s, I had an amazing opportunity for a new job. And it was something I was very qualified for. And it was exciting. It had great opportunities for growth and responsibility. And it was one of those things when you're young, it's a perfect stepping stone. So I froze. I just couldn't do it. Actually, I ran. That's all I did. I didn't freeze. I ran away. I left the country just to make sure. And everything made perfect sense at the time. Because the story I was telling myself was, I want to be free, I want to be independent, none of this corporate bullshit for me, I'm a rebel, I don't need this. But underneath it, there was this feeling that I don't want anyone to understand that I shouldn't have been here in the first place. There shouldn't have been a job for me to be offered. And I realized it's a repeating pattern. It's something that happened before in my life. I'd get an opportunity, and I'd step in and get closer and closer because obviously it's something I wanted. And then, fuck it, I'm going. And again, I'd usually leave the country. It's a very helpful way to get out of a job. Actually, depends on the job. But I was terrified. That's the truth. I was sure that if someone could see me, and I mean like really, really see me, they would run away. So I just make it easier for them. I'd piss off myself. I'd just hide. I'd save everybody the trouble. Because I grew up knowing that I had a monster inside me. I wasn't able to look at it. And I knew that I could not risk that anybody else could see that monster. Because if I confronted that monster, there's a chance that I would lose. And if I lose that battle, there's a chance that I would die. Because when you're young, those stakes are incredibly high. So, the thing about this monster is it made me feel different. Because I could only see my monster. I couldn't see that everybody else was carrying a monster of their own. I couldn't see that everybody's carrying that heavy load. Because everybody else is carrying it around like I was. And we're all hiding it. And sometimes I still do that. Walk around thinking I'm the only one. What I'm trying to do now is to see that we are all in that position of having a heaviness that we might not even be able to see ourselves. And if we can't see it ourselves, we're definitely not going to be able to show it to anybody else. So for me, the way of dealing with this was outsourcing my emotions to fiction. I was writing. Creative writing was my way of dealing with it. And I know there's a lot of people here who are probably doing the same. So there was a fiction writing course that I did in shadow writing. And I was obviously very curious because it was about writing depth. And the idea of writing depth is you can only write a character in fiction that has the same depth of emotion as you do. If you want to write a character that feels shame and guilt and grief, but you can't face your own, it's not going to work. If you want to write about a character that has violent tendencies and you can't face your own anger, that's not going to work. And that was the cheapest therapy I've ever had in my life. So this is, to me, the tension of being human. So the more we push down that dark and heavy feeling that we carry, the less whole we are. And the less we're able to experience our own existence. And the less we're able to experience everybody else's existence. The less we're able to connect. So healing, to me, is dealing with that paradox. That paradox of being a human being who is alive. I have to realize that I'm gentle, but I'm also a person with violent thoughts. I'm generous, and I'm really greedy. I'm humble, and I'm arrogant. And I'm scared of being judged, but I'm also terribly judgmental. And I think the world is increasingly polarized because we won't accept in ourselves what we see in others. And this creates that tension. And the thing here is, this is an incredibly uncomfortable process to go through. I don't recommend this to anybody who doesn't want to be healed. Because this is the essence of it, becoming whole, accepting that we are all of it. And then the problem is that the ego is a tricky little shit. The ego will take you on a journey of personal development up until this point. And after that point, the change happens, but it won't take you further. It will lead you down that road of thinking, yeah, I'm doing it, I'm changing, but it won't take you that far to really make it So to quote the great philosopher Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. So when I realized I want to teach others these tools that have helped me change my life, turns out that people only listen to you if they can see you. And you can only be seen if you put yourself out there. So, how do you deal with that? I had to deal with that fear of being seen. Obviously, the journal came in quite handy. And going through a few rounds of curiosity and being honest with myself, I realized this fear was a fear of being judged. Right? The thing is, there's also a part of me that really wanted to be seen. But it's hard to be seen if you feel deeply, deeply broken. So that was a realization for me. Like, I'm coming to terms with that paradox of terrified of being judged, but also desperately wanting to be seen, was something that helped build an awareness of who I am in a more complete sense. And that process of building that self-awareness became a cornerstone of my new identity. You know, I was basically walking around being like the most self-aware person in the room. I'm like, look at me, I am so self-aware. It was basically a badge of honor. Look how self-helped I am. Look at how personally developed I have become. And in the end, it's what we do with it that counts. It's about those moments when we notice that we're just about to say something that's unhelpful or rude or unkind, and then we don't say it. Those moments when we look at our friends and we can see that they're getting triggered, and then we don't take what they say at face value. Or those moments when there's something that needs to be said, and then finally we should say it. And what's interesting about this is that all of this happens when the notebook is closed. It's a real journalist, but all of this happens when you close the notebook. So journaling to me is a tool, just like a hammer, potter's wheel, a paintbrush. So when I say that journaling changed my life, there's a part of it that's true. But there's also a part here that perpetuates this myth of being saved. Because the thing is, you cannot be saved if you save yourself. So for me, by saying that the journal saved my life, I kept that door open just in case somebody else wanted to come in and rescue me. And the thing is, if you want to change your life, I have to deal with that painful fact that if I want a different life, I have to change. I have to do things differently. And I used to do my journaling, I used to do my affirmations, do my meditation. And all these healing processes, I think now are just really, really great exercises in procrastination. So when I realized then that nobody's coming to save me, then what do you do? I have to be honest with myself and say that the change that I am experiencing, I made it. That's the key here. And my journal obviously helped me. But I wouldn't be able to make a pot without a wheel, a table without a hammer, or a painting without a brush. So healing is about taking that ownership of all of ourselves, including the fact that we are the ones who are doing the saving. Because if I don't, I become a passive bystander in my own life. So that was the problem for me. Like, even in that moment of seeing and observing the change, I wouldn't own it. So that is the path forwards. Owning the good and the bad. Being able to own the fact that I'm terrified and excited about being on stage. Because the journal in the end is that safe place. That's that place where we can rehearse, we can pretend, we can imagine. It's where we can allow ourselves to be greedy and generous, to be kind and unkind, to want to cry and want to support. But more than anything, it's a place where we can reimagine and we can rewrite. So for me, there's this idea of, if I want to create a vision of Oliver 3.0, I can ask what would he do instead of the Buddha, obviously. And I realized that he would get on stage and he'd be nervous and then he'd do it anyway. And the reality is that in order to become Oliver 3.0, I had to come on stage. There was no way around it. So the question then is, what would happen if we could all see that our journal isn't just a dumping ground for our fears and doubts and grief or dreams and hopes and ideas, but also a place where you can define what that new you is? And what does your next chapter start with? And you don't need to understand all the reasons why you are where you are. You just need to decide that you want things to be different. So sit with your journal and write about the person that you're becoming. And then close the notebook and take one step to make change. Because the reality is, that journal will not change your life. You will. So, I've taken my step. I'm here. I'm done. Now it's your turn. Thank you very much.